Choo-chooo! All aboard the railroad to an amazing podcast. I'm Courtney.
And I'm Sean.
And this is the GM's Toolbox. Welcome back to yet another episode of a GM's Toolbox. I'm Courtney, she, they.
And I'm Sean, they, them.
And we're going to chat about railroading. Yeah, so I feel like we chatted about railroading in the past. At least I'm sure we have. We have.
Yeah, probably.
But not in a full episode. And throughout my research on the topic, I know what railroading is, but throughout looking up links for one of our segments, I found out that a lot of people don't know what it is, or they'll use the term super loosely, and then, yeah, it's just not good. So today we're going to chat about, what the hell railroading is, and the good, the bad, the hurting of the cats.
Meow. Yes, we are going to talk about the good, the bad, and the hurting of the cats. That's hurting with a D, not hurting with a T. Don't hurt cats. So, what is railroading?
Railroading.
Since you've done all this research.
Not all this. I read a few blog posts. And my blogs, Reddit posts.
Esteemed researcher Courtney.
Yes.
What is railroading in the context of
indeed
Tatopacha?
Absolutely, Sean. I'll let you know exactly what railroading is. So when you have a train, just kidding. Railroading is when you take the agency away from your players, period.
Full stop.
Am I wrong?
No.
What railroading is not is sprinkling plot points and placing NPCs in places where you can give those plot points to your players. And one thing that I kept seeing, I was also doing research on metagaming and what the general consensus of that is, as well as a couple other things. Anyways, I see a lot of people would rather have a sandboxy game versus a plot story driven module. And while that is true for a lot of people, because then it feels like the world is vast, I also feel like you can easily make your world a plot-driven campaign while also giving players plot points and having them feel like the world is huge. You know what I mean? Does that all make sense?
Oh, sure.
Absolutely. You could do those things and not take the agency away from your players. The idea of a story-driven plot point and railroading are two different things.
Yes.
Very different things. And I feel like everybody thinks that railroading means you want to keep them on the track to the end goal. And that's not the case. Railroading is when you take the agency away from your players. And what that means is when you are not giving them choices. And you can give them choices that deal with your plot, but when you're taking away the choice from them, you are railroading them. You aren't collaborating the story with them. You're not writing a story with them. You are trying to tell your story and hoping that the players choose what you want. And if they don't, you will then push them in that direction instead of just letting them. Instead of giving them the option, how do I explain this?
I don't think it's so much that you're taking choice away from them. It's okay to remove options so that they don't really have choices. I just kidnapped a player last week.
Right at the end of an episode, yeah.
That's not going to leave a lot of choice. But what I think railroading really is, to me, railroading is ignoring player choice. If a player makes a choice and you don't allow that choice to happen or allow that choice to be effective, and that's a fine line too, because you whatever, we'll get into that later, but at its core, railroading is removing player agency by ignoring their choice. Sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes you don't have any fucking option. Well, you always have a choice, but sometimes you don't have any options and you have to do something. Like you have a bag dumped over your head. Your choices are very limited in that case. However, if that player makes a choice and it's not a choice that I would make or a choice that serves the story that I was crafting, well, sucks to be me. That's their choice and that's their character, and therefore that's what's happening. And that's why it's not railroading, even though they have a very limited set of options. That plot is it started and it's gonna go on, but what they choose to do within that plot is what happens.
Yeah, that's a very good way. And I was like wrapping around that idea, but it's ignoring player choice is a good way of putting it, because you're collaborating with the DM to make a story together. And if you're ignoring choice, you're not collaborating at that point in time, and that's not fun. Now, in this case, railroading is bad.
Choo-choo.
Period.
Yeah.
Is there any case with the definition now set officially by the Arcanery, is it ever good to railroad your players?
With the definition of being ignoring players' choices, not really. But for a slightly looser definition of railroad, we can say that that's bad railroading. That's the bad railroading. What's the good railroading?
Okay. All right, I'm down for this. Now we have two definitions. Bad railroading, when you ignore player choice.
Yeah, it is bad to ignore player's choice. So to take away player agency by ignoring their choice is bad. Bad form, sir. Not good. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Good railroading, or to remove the stigma of the word, direct storytelling, or some other thing that I probably could have workshopped more.
Yeah, but
we'll workshop it.
Yeah, we'll workshop it, and we're gonna find a new term, because that'll be delightful.
It'll go to a committee. We're gonna form an exploratory committee to workshop a new word for railroading in a not nasty context. Pardon me while I attempt to clear my throat with coffee, which is just going to make it worse. But you come here for the vocal fry.
The vocal fry, the cursing, and the occasional tips.
Oh, right. That's what we do. We're a tip podcast. But just the tip.
Just
calm down, everybody. Railroading in a good context is, in fact, what I just did right there. I drove us back after derailing us completely myself. I then drove us back onto the rails to get us back on track. And if you're getting someone back on track, then you're railroading, but it's not taking away player options or player agency. Cam could have said, fuck you, I'm going to keep laughing for the next 30 minutes, or I'm going to stop recording, and could have walked away. Granted, this isn't a game, this is a podcast, and really it's just two friends trying to make each other laugh.
Basically. Yeah.
But you can do that in your games too. And that's just sort of guiding people back into the story. And you can do that. You can run a linear path where, just like a video game, they go from bop to bop to bop to bop to bop. And that's what it is. You can drive them back into the main plot. And you can do all of that without taking away their choice, taking away their option, ignoring their choice. Well, you can take away their options. I take away options all the time.
Yeah.
But we don't ignore player action. We don't ignore player choice, and therefore we don't take away player agency. You can, Cam was saying this earlier, but you can drop an NPC that is at the inn that the party is coming back to, dying on a bed, who tells them that the whole town has gotten totally fucked by a bunch of spores that have taken over the minds of a bunch of the town.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah. and then all of a sudden their their options are super limited. They can either rush back to the town to figure out why the fuck half the town is all cray cray and zombified, or they can ignore that. And that was a viable option. Y'all could have ignored it, just like you ignored the tree in the first place.
You asshole.
and then who knows what would have happened. I mean, I know what would have happened.
If
but
the other players listen to this fucking podcast, which I'm assuming that they do, at least Gabe does. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know who listens to this goddamn podcast. But they're going to hear you. We're going to rebel.
It made perfect sense. It was a very logical choice, and I'm very delighted to have been able to continue to bring it up. But yeah, you can drop an NPC
easily.
Ahead.
No, you can easily drop an NPC like that, and I've done that plenty of times. And there's something that's been irritating me: the idea of limiting the player's choices in lieu of, because when you said Cam could have just said fuck you and walked away and stopped recording. But we're recording a podcast, right? So there's this idea, right? In that example, we are recording a podcast. So I wouldn't walk away unless you, I don't know, did something super rude. Because
ruder than normal.
Yes. But the mindset is we're recording a podcast. So in the same sense, when you're playing D&D, you're playing a game. So you're sitting at the table. I guess in a lot of ways, metaphorically, you're sitting in front of your computer, whatever, however you play D&D, you're gathering together to play a game. Okay? The goal of the game is not to fuck up the DM. It's not to fuck up the GM. Though there are plenty of times where you unintentionally choose this weird ass solution to what you think is the issue. And the GM's like, okay, what the fuck, but fine. But you're sitting there to play a game. So when you're railroading your players, you're not necessarily being like, you're going down this road and this road only. You have plenty of choices, but you're also playing a game. You are storytelling with your friends. And so there's this idea that's I feel like there's a handful of people out there that they sit at the table and want to just fuck up the DM. And that's I guess a whole different, that's the bad players episode.
That's the bad players episode.
But that's the thing though, right? When a GM is railroading you in a good way, that shouldn't trigger in your brain, I can feel this person railroading me. Let me see if I can find a really weird way to fuck this up.
Being on a linear path is not necessarily a bad thing. If you as a player want more of a fully open world sandbox thing, well, talk to your GM about that.
Yeah.
Because that's clearly not the style of game that they're running. If you think that has come up as a problem. But remember, again, that there's plenty of options on a linear path, and that's just as important for players to remember as it is for DMs to remember, GMs to remember. There are plenty of options on a linear path.
Yeah.
Just like in a linear video game, not that Dungeons and Dragons or any other should be a video game. We have video games for that.
Yeah. Minecraft.
But there are plenty of options on a linear path. There are plenty of options in a sandbox, and you got to find a balance between that. And the way you find that balance is a little bit by maybe it's not that you're railroading your players. It's that you are continuing on as the conductor of the train, and as the conductor of the train, you are making sure the train stays at least mostly on the tracks, because when it starts to deviate off the tracks, that's when it starts to get really bumpy for people and it's uncomfortable. And also then the train crashes and burns and you have the corpses of dead children and everyone's really sad and it's a tragedy and it's on the 5 o'clock news and it's horrible. It's awful. I mean,
Speaking of really sad, do you want to stat Thomas the train?
Yeah, let's stat dad.
Awesome.
Stat dad.
Stat that. Dibbity bop, ba doo choo bop bow. So I had the bright idea of statting Thomas the Train because we're talking about railroads. So,
hell yeah.
to be perfectly honest, of course, being a parent, I certainly watched Thomas the Train. The one thing is, I don't remember anything about it, like at all.
Well, the most important thing to remember, it's Thomas the Tank Engine, yeah. The most important thing to remember, I think, is that in the mostly claymation animated, but also kind of live action Thomas the Tank Engine, the conductor was at some time or other both Ringo Starr and George Carlin.
That's cool. I didn't know that. Okay, so how do we make Thomas the Tank Engine in 5e? I say that at one point in time, there was once a conductor and a regular train.
Once there was a conductor and a regular train. Okay.
And then
somehow
they combined.
Okay.
How? We'll figure that out. But at one point in time, there was once a conductor and a regular train, a regular lead car, right? And then somehow they combined. The body of this conductor went into the train, and then in this horrific turn of events, its face turned into the front of this train.
Accidentally or intentionally? Important question.
Are you just like super obsessed with trains, so therefore you wanted
Shout out to my friend Ashlyn.
Maybe you're a person who wants to live forever and finds this really awesome power source and decides to shove it into your body.
That's what I'm saying. The second you started talking about that, my brain immediately went to Lich and Phylactery.
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm. Me too.
Because, like, if it was an accident, you know, there are magical mishaps and shit like that. We could figure that out. That's a tragic figure. Whereas this, like a Lich and a Phylactery, or like a mind upload type thing. So it's a Lich and their Phylactery, but also an armored shell to house the Phylactery that is being powered by that. So this is like the core consciousness rests within something. Oh, it's kind of like our smart house. Check out our smart house episode and actual smart house.
Yeah, and our cool layout. Also super fun to make that. Anyways.
Yeah. So there's this core consciousness inside, which has then like projected his face onto the train because, you know, people need faces or something. People become very attached to their face. I have nightmares about faceless people, so recurring nightmare. People, no faces. Very fucking creepy.
People need faces.
People need faces. I don't know. They're attached to them.
Literally.
Well, it's really sad when they're not. I mean, it happens. It sucks.
It's like you're pointing out very obvious things. Like, yes, people need faces. Yes, they are attached. Yes, it is very sad when they are not attached.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Sean. I agree on all of those points.
Where's the lie, Cam? The fuck were we talking about?
Okay, so the whole Lich and Phylactery thing, if we were to do this, if we were to go down this railroad, would they ever separate? Because the whole thing, right, with the Phylactery is it's supposed to be like hidden away where when you do die, you then reanimate in or around the Phylactery, right? So if Thomas the Tank Engine is a Lich and the armored shell is that of the Phylactery, when you kill Thomas, what happened?
Well, I would think that, for instance, so what I'm imagining, because you said conductor and train, and this is Thomas the Tank Engine.
Yeah.
So it's Mr. Conductor, whether it be Ringo Starr or George Carlin, or there's probably at least one other person who did it. Oh, they made a more recent one with Alec Ball. Doesn't matter. But so Mr. Conductor was getting up in years, or whatever, and decided that Mr. Conductor loved trains too much to die. And so built this tank engine to house his consciousness. So I'm sort of thinking of it as like a reverse phylactery. Like his consciousness is in this tank engine, but his body is chillaxing in some glass coffin inside the train station, like Walt Disney's head in the on Main Street, in the firehouse. Urban legends are fun.
Urban legends are fun and also terrifying. Anyways, so in this world, on this train, on this railroad, what personality are we giving this? Like, what is Thomas? Thomas, I imagine, is sort of sad, right? I'm imagining like a mad face Thomas and like sad face Thomas. Is Thomas normally a happy train? I don't remember.
Thomas is like a little kid. So, yeah, I mean, Thomas runs into trouble.
Oh no, this is bad. But then I realized that we also did like Big Bird and shit, so it's okay, and Jack and stuff.
No, Thomas is very innocent. Thomas runs into problems which can make Thomas sad or mad or just have trouble. But it's like the little engine that could.
Yeah, totally. Okay.
You know, that's the American version of.
So then
of this,
we wouldn't necessarily build this stat. I mean, it's going to have abilities and shit, but as far as scenarios, you wouldn't necessarily find Thomas the Train in a point in time where it would want to kill you.
Well, okay, yes, probably, unless we could back up a little further, because I was talking about the television show just there. Mm-hmm. The books. It's based on books.
There are books?
Yeah, it's based on books.
God, everything is based on books.
Well, people like writing. People like reading.
I'm trying.
Some of us read when we're not depressed. In the books, Thomas is a dick.
Thomas is a dick?
Yeah, he's like an arrogant. He's like me. he's very self-absorbed. He's very arrogant. He's the tank engine.
Okay, hold on. Now viewers, listeners, constantly we hear Sean say things like they're arrogant or they're self-absorbed or they're an asshole, and I just want to point out that they are almost always none of these things. They just say these things a lot. And
I'm pretty arrogant.
You are pretty arrogant sometimes. Self-absorbed, not at all.
Not so much.
Asshole, sure, you can be, but I can also be an asshole, and I'm the lighter of the two in this couple here. So I just want to point it out. I want to say this. I think that there's going to be some misconceptions if you ever to meet us in person. This person's not an asshole. Anyways, let's continue on. In the books, he's an asshole. So then what are we doing? I mean, can this be a very well-rounded stat block personality where he is an asshole and we're creating... What are we doing? What's... Because like we created Skipper, right? The animated pirate ship. Delightful.
The very anxious pirate ship.
The very anxious pirate ship, right? So like who is Thomas the Tank Engine to us? Now that we know that he can be an asshole, now that we know that he can also be an innocent creature, what is Thomas to us?
I don't know. I think we're doing an episode about railroading, so how fun would it be to stat a train that has gone a little off the rails?
I love that. Okay. So this, as far as personality goes, I'm imagining now you get on this train and at first it seems to be a very normal train. The front of the train is the animated, the phylactery, the thing, not the rest of the train.
No, it's just
you're not
Thomas
riding in the body of
tank.
this thing.
No, we've done that.
How metal, right? Think about that.
Well, that's the Dark Tower. That's book 4 of the Dark Tower. They're on a train, and it's basically Thomas the Tank Engine, only also kind of the subway, only also kind of the smart house, and there's a lot of riddles involved. And anyway.
So you're on this train, and then you start to hear maybe like there are people that like run the train and they go, I'm going to talk to the conductor. I'm going to talk to the conductor. And when in reality, they kind of just like yell, hey, you know what? No, fuck you guys. You want to go over this mountain? I don't want to go over there. I'm going to go this way.
Yeah, everyone, I know that we were heading toward Alberta, but I made a wrong turn at Albuquerque, and I'm just gonna go with it.
Feels right. So
feels right.
I think we have enough food. So
also, we will not be stopping, and the restrooms are now out of order. It's the last overnight train I took. Ayo.
Oh no. So what are some abilities that we can give this asshole?
Lots of speed,
Absolutely.
really fast, but anything that isn't on the rails is like double difficult terrain. Like movement is quartered.
All right.
Off the rails. I mean, it could still move. Like it's got, whatever. It could still chunk forward, but it's not, it's got like 120 speed as long as it's on the rails, but when it goes off the rails, it's down to 30.
That's solid. Which
still gets it right fucking up to you.
That feels solid. I think that any train cars that are attached to Thomas has the ability to lock and unlock all the doors.
Trap people inside. Yep. Terrifying. Definitely some sort of charge thing or overrun type thing, because if it builds up enough momentum, it's just gonna poof right over you like a train would. Because it's a train.
Because hey, it's a train.
Yeah. So that and that's like, I mean, that's a huge amount of damage.
Oh, it's an insane amount of damage. And I think that if you do more cars, you think it'd be more damage?
Yeah, probably.
Right.
That's not even an attack at that point. It's a dex save. Dex save for half. If you fail, you get hit by the tank engine and every car currently attached to the tank engine. And if you succeed, you get clipped by the tank engine and take, only damage from that as you dodge out, or only damage from one car as you dodge out of the way.
Yeah.
And I would do a lot of damage.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Like part of me wants to be like 1d6 for each 10 feet it moves for each car.
That's a lot of damage.
I mean, you're getting hit by a train. It's a fucking instant kill.
Yeah.
Unless you're a monk, in which case you're just like, whew.
Yeah. Okay. How does this thing move?
Oh God, was Thomas a coal engine?
I don't know. But it doesn't need to eat, right? Or sleep.
If we're going with the train, I think the train does sleep. At the end of the day, they like all go back to the like station yard and they bed down for the night. It's a steam locomotive. So it has to eat something, because something's gotta, it's not eat so much, but like if it's a steam engine, it's there's fuel is involved. So yeah, like you got to feed it coal or wood or whatever to heat the boiler to keep it going. So it needs a source of fuel, which is kind of like eating it, like once per day or whatever, needs to have its fuel source replenished.
And who does that? And I feel like that's an intimate process.
That sounds pretty intimate. Yeah. Minions, though. That means a Renfield for this.
Gosh. Okay. So then let's talk a little bit about like lore. This is a very long stat but I'm just trying to wrap my head around. I don't feel complete yet with Thomas the Tank Engine.
Sure.
So this is an old being. The body of this conductor is in a glass coffin at the train station. How did this, I guess, I don't know, if a fucking talking train told me that you are now my minion, I probably would be like, yeah, that makes sense. How did Thomas convince people to man his train and maintain him, right? Because if nobody did that, then he technically couldn't move.
That's true. So high charisma,
right?
Very high charisma, which makes sense no matter which version of Thomas we were going for.
True.
And then some sort of combination of like charm spells or innate charming magic and promises of eternal life, because if Mr. Conductor could turn himself into Thomas the Tank Engine, then he can share that knowledge, or so he says, much in the same way that like Renfield is a little different in that he's a ghoul and blah, 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 blah. But it's the same type of, someday I'll be a real vampire type shit.
Okay. I mean, promises of eternal life just makes the most sense. That's totally.
Yeah.
And also charm abilities like the friend spell.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's great also for both a combat and just a like general standpoint, because you're getting people to buy a ticket to ride on your train or whatever, and then it's like everything's fine until someone does something that's not fine, at which point it's like that's when Thomas goes off the rails is when someone doesn't listen or someone does something that Thomas doesn't like. But yeah, some sort of like train yard hand or hands, the us of train yards who are there to shovel coal and whatnot.
Yeah, okay. Different world. What if nobody knows about the fact that Thomas the Tank Engine was once a conductor?
Just a living, a living train.
Like almost mimic can kind of shut its eyes and then it looks like a normal ass train. So then it's maintained by, I think probably one person knows about, maybe like his best friend knows about Thomas before he was a train, but he can like when he's standing stock still look like any other normal train, therefore like selling tickets. I mean, I love your idea as well, but different world. What if it's that?
Sure. But if it's that, then someone needs to be on the train to shovel the coal while it's running. Someone needs to run.
That's true.
Thomas.
Yeah, so then like his best friend.
Which could be like his best friend, yeah. Shoveling coal, working the thing, and then so how does the encounter start?
I mean, if someone were to walk up to you and you look like a normal human, and then someone goes fuck you and punches you in the face, you're like, ah.
Well, yeah, but how's that happen to the train? I mean, if someone punches me in the face, well, yeah, I mean that's going to start an encounter. But it doesn't matter. We're trying to stat a thing, not a...
Yeah, that's true. You're right. But I think that overall we got a stat of it. But I think we should chat more about it. Because, I mean, we're going to create like an awesome like stat block for this thing. And we're going to do like the lore. So we can totally agree upon like what kind of storyline we want to do for it. Do you think that it is more difficult not to railroad your players? Like giving them more options? Letting them do whatever the fuck they want? Or is it easier to just railroad your players in our good definition of railroading?
Yeah. I think it's easier on players to railroad them a little bit. I think it's really easy for players to get buried by choice.
Absolutely.
So if there are just infinite options, then they have no idea what to do, which is why you have an arbiter who is crafting a world. That's why GMs exist, that's why GMs exist, to railroad. And I mean, if you look back at the
statement.
fucking Bold statement. Hot take.
Hot
here
goddamn
from
take. I love it.
Sean McStravick. Yeah, I think that, I mean, we exist to create a track, a purpose, and you can, I mean, that can be a totally open sandbox world, but then, you know, they make a choice, and you then have to craft something, because otherwise it's not an arbitered game, it's a collective storytelling. And there are games like that. I'm not even going to go into that whole line of thought, but there are tons of games like that.
There are people,
and they're fun.
Yeah, and there are people in this world that will, you know, they have all the time in the world to write, or choose to spend their free time writing rails. They're writing stories and possible outlines for varying stories. But no matter what, when you follow down a rail, you're being railroaded. The railroad is the story, and deviating from that path is your choices. But eventually, they go back to the main story. If you're a good game master, right? The whole point of it is you're telling a story together, and there's going to be a beginning and there's going to be an end, right?
Or it can, well, I mean, yeah, everything begins and everything ends eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think that it is difficult for players to have nothing but options without any direction, and I like to give my players a series of options at various points, so that, like, branching paths, basically.
Yeah.
But I try and set up my games so that, man, just so many fucking train metaphors, so that when we hit that station, you know, they're at the station and they can buy a ticket to, you know, however many different destinations, and what destination they head to, that's where the story turns. Then that's what I like to do. But then once they leave that station, once they've, you know, bought their ticket, it's gonna be a bit before they can buy a ticket to someplace else, because they're on the train at that point. And, you know, they do still have options. You can open the train car door and do a big Western tumble out of it. You know, you can wait for it to slow down a little bit and hop off. So many fucking dumbass metaphors.
I absolutely love it, though, because it makes total sense. Like, the idea of you're telling a story together, but you still have choices. And when you're trying to tell a story, when you're trying to collaborate with your players on a story, and I think the whole point here is to give your players options. But when you're writing your story, you know, write a few out yourself and be like, oh, okay, there are these options. Where can they go? You ask yourself these questions as you're prepping your sessions. And I'm not saying write out the whole story. What I'm saying is write out enough content for a couple of sessions and of where you can assume this will go, knowing what your players might do, right? Eventually you kind of know what your players are going to do, what the thought process is. So therefore you can then ask yourself, okay, well, if we go down this railroad, where is it going to take us? What are some ways to deviate from that path? Okay, I'll write those two a little bit as well. And then you are somewhat prepared. You are never going to be prepared enough for your players. Your players are smarter than you are. Period. The end. Because they are going to do shit that you don't know, you can't write about. Seriously. Like, you can't do that. So you have a bit of railroading to get them into location, but it's like herding cats. Eventually they're going to deviate.
Yeah. I've started just asking myself, if this, then what? And that's all. I just have that what, that's the answer. And then that's enough for me to craft the next leg of story if and when that happens.
And we use that a ton just in the Arcanery Labs for the world building podcast on the Patreon. We ask ourselves that question throughout the entirety of the episode. You know, okay, well, if this happens, then how will this work? Well, if this happens, does this make sense? And you continue to ask yourself that question. But when you're riding a train, you know, it's going to lead you somewhere. Just like, I don't know, have you ever rode Amtrak? Let's smell-o-vision that. Smell-o-vision, 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 smell-o-vision. So So I had the bright idea of smell-visioning an Amtrak. I had the delight, not once, but I think we've done this twice, riding the Amtrak from Bay Area, California to Disneyland.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, twice. I would not recommend it.
No.
It takes all day rather than, 2 hours of time. I guess 3 hours if you're like me who gets to airports really early.
Shit, I can drive it faster than Amtrak.
I believe it's been years since I've done this, but it was like, I think it's 3 total trains and a bus. Or it might be 2 trains and a bus. I think it's train, bus, train. And then it's a bus to get to your hotel, shuttle to get to your hotel. Anyways, so I have a fair amount of experience with Amtrak. Have you ever ridden Amtrak?
Oh, yeah. I've actually also taken Amtrak to Disneyland, but I did that from San Diego. It's a much shorter trip.
Yeah.
And then I've taken Amtrak. I've gone across the country twice, actually, from the Bay Area to St. Louis, and then from St. Louis to Chicago. Mm-hmm. And then from the Bay Area down to North Carolina.
Oh, nice.
I really recommend going up through, taking the train up through Colorado.
I really want to do that.
It's so great.
Yeah. I heard it's really pretty.
It's really pretty.
Yeah.
Which is why I did Amtrak that time, was simply to go to see that, because I had the time.
Yeah. So we're going to smell-o-vision an Amtrak chip.
Shout out to Amtrak.
Amtrak, man.
Shout out to trains.
Yeah, fucking love trains. There are a handful of things that remind me of an Amtrak trip.
The inability to buy a tampon. I'm not fucking kidding. They don't sell them.
They don't. They straight up don't. So prepare for that. Another tip for you that is not gaming related. One, and that is very important to me, I need you to smell-o-vision what an Amtrak cheeseburger is. I need that, because we eat those. They're terrible for you. They're barely burgers. But that was
calling
always
it a burger is a
that's a guilty pleasure. For what it was for us was to have a cheeseburger from Amtrak with, the packaged ketchup that was not Heinz. It was some, off-brand ketchup. Okay, I want to smell that. I want to smell the bathroom chemical. I'm trying to give you smells here. So that, I also want to smell some sort of alcohol. Because for me, whenever we went, either someone around us was drinking like a wine or a beer, or I was drinking a beer. What else? I think that's it.
So we got burger, bathroom chemical, booze.
Yep.
Burgers, bathrooms, and booze.
The 3 B's of Amtrak.
I suppose actually usually it's like burgers, booze, and then bathroom. But
accurate.
Heyo. Okay. You feel a jolt as the train starts to move. It's gathering speed. A little bit of time passes as the landscape blurs past you, looking out the window as the sun is sort of cresting, not quite in the window, not glaring, just lighting the world around you. The hills roll by as the train carries forward, and you find yourself in that liminal space of you are in motion but stationary. The world is moving so fast past you, but not so fast that you can't look out and enjoy various bits of scenery. And as you're doing this, you get this smell, this hint of sort of soggy dough, not quite soggy, but like damp bread. We can call it cheese. It's this sort of plasticine smell with something that maybe once saw a cow underneath it. That pure microwaved American cheese smell. It's a craft single, and Lords of Kobol, if they did not manage to pull that plastic wrapper off it, boy, good for them. Actually, the whole thing comes wrapped in foil. They stick it right in the microwave under the heat lamp. So you've got this this greasy undertone to that, this sort of damp, soft bun, this plasticine faux dairy cheese that just hits your nostrils, and then the grease and char of something that may or may not have once been meat. And you take a bite because the smell hits your nose, and before you can stop yourself, you are down there. You are buying one of these $9.50 burgers, and you unwrap it and you take that bite, and as you bite in, your stomach recoils immediately, but your taste buds are just like, this is home. As you bite in and the grease sort of drips and spreads, an aroma of flavors, that sort of tangy iron scent hits your nose. The sweet grease and that plasticine cheese with that soft, damp bread, that over-steamed microwaved bun. As you're eating that, it's so delicious, but you find yourself a little thirsty, and you look over, and the couple sitting at the table, down the ways, they have mimosas that they've gotten. They're having a late brunch because why not? Time is meaningless. You're on a train. You exist in between spaces. So you go up to the counter. As you walk past, that tang of the orange juice and the sort of soft champagne smell, brute smell. This is Amtrak. And you walk back up and you order yourself a beer. And it's got that bitter hop aroma, but then underneath it is a soft roasted malt, and it just hits the back of your nostrils, and your mouth begins to water even more as you're trying to get the cheese out from behind your molar, and these hops hit your nose. And you drink your beer.
Fuck you for being so accurate.
You drink your beer, washing down the delicious flavor, and your stomach is just really unhappy with you. And a couple of beers later, you're on a train. Time is meaningless. You have to pee. You go and you head back toward the bathroom, and before you even get there, that harsh chemical cleaner, it's the best way to describe it is that it smells blue.
Yeah.
It's that harsh blue chemical scent.
That's so funny.
It's a clean porta potty. It's chemical cleanser and artificial soap. And you walk in, and as you do, you open the door to the little bathroom. You're hit in the face with this chemical smell, and you see disappearing briefly into the toilet is some sort of strange, many-tentacled thing. And as you start to slowly back out, you feel a hand on your back and a whisper in your ear as this hot, cheesy, burgery breath hits your nose and says, "Oh no, playtime's just begun." And you are shoved into the bathroom as this horrific blue urinal cake monster comes crawling out of the toilet. Roll for initiative.
Urinal cake monster. That's terrifying. Oh my god, that's great. Amtrak. Home of the urinal cake monster.
Home of the urinal cake monster.
That was incredibly accurate, and when you talked about getting I instinctively stuck my tongue on my molar where the cheese would be, because that's completely accurate. All that is so accurate. There's no way of segueing plastic cheese plastic cheese into our next topic. But I feel like this is something that a lot of people, I don't know, want us to hear a chat about. published adventures and their inherent railroading. Like when you buy an adventure, you're buying a railroad. This is the story. This is a beginning. This is the end. You have things like Waterdeep Dragon Heist that Wizards of the Coast created, where they have like, I think it's 5 different options, which is very unique because normally you just have like the storyline and you string plot points and the players follow it and you have a story. Where Dragon Heist comes in, you have a bunch of different options. I think it's 5 of them. And then how they wrote it was they had the beginning, which was the same-ish, and then they had the middle, which was a bunch of different options, and then they had the end, and then whatever one you chose, you had different areas you could read to make the end of it. So cool. But are there ways of making a published adventure feel less linear?
No. Next question.
No. Anyways, what does the internet want?
But in truth, yes, you totally can. And I think that WotC is doing a pretty good job the last couple of years of giving GMs options within their...
Yeah.
Well, that's not true. I mean, that is true, but that's not what I mean. With giving players options within their campaigns and giving GMs the tools to allow players to make options or to make options. Well, yeah, sure. To make options, to make them up. But this is actually something I struggle a lot with whenever it comes to using stuff written by other people, because other people are smarter than me and I'm just not that good at it. Working on it. But while staying within the framework of a published adventure, making the players' choices feel like they are important, like that what the decisions they're making are
impactful.
Yeah, that the world is being affected by them, even though it's a pre-existing story. And I think one of the easiest ways to do that is to not think of this adventure or this campaign in isolation. This is the story that you are telling, but to think of this story as being part of a greater world. If you think of this story as existing in a greater whole, then the choices the players make can affect the greater whole, which can allow other pieces to come in and out of this pre-existing story. So you think of this adventure, this campaign as a sketch, as an outline. It's the treatment, if you have any experience in film. It's just the pieces, the markers that you need to hit. It's the outline for a season of a television show. It's not a movie. And so, all of the players' choices can affect things in and out that can then come in and out of the story and direct them to those things that come in and out, those things that the players affect, those things that the players bring to it, can then direct the players to the next major plot point as it comes up.
Absolutely.
Unless you're running Storm King's Thunder and you hit, I think it's chapter 4 or whatever, where it's just like, and now it's open time. And it's like, okay, cool. But how do I get back to the story again?
Yeah. Storm King's. Ugh.
It is actually, it's a really good adventure, but it's flawed in the middle. Anyway,
the thing that we both have had issues with is this isn't my world. This is someone else's world. So it's a lot harder for, I'm going to say, us to shoot off the cuff to improv, because it's not our world. So there's, at least for me, it's hard for me to roleplay things that aren't my world, because normally in my world, everything is true. Whereas in someone else's world, I don't know if it's true. So it's harder for me to roleplay that sort of stuff.
I think the real trouble that I have with running, like, I was just thinking about it as you were saying that, because all of that is true for me as well. But for me, I think the reason that is true for me is that I am inherently a lazy GM. I am, well, a lazy person, and you can put the work in to make an adventure fit in your world.
Yeah,
Often
that's true.
the published adventures, from whether it be an official source like, Wizards of the Coast if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, or from, Paizo if it's Pathfinder, or Monte Cook Gangs and games if it's blah 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 blah, who cares. They usually have suggestions on how to adjust things for your own world, but that's work.
Yeah, it's work.
You have to
a lot of work.
You have to do work to do that. Whereas if it's homebrew shit, it's less work. I don't have to adjust things. I just keep going with the next. And so my inherent laziness makes it really difficult for me to run other people's work.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of a shame. Although I do like reading them and I still buy them. So,
so yeah, you're still supporting them, just not using them. But yeah, I mean, that's, exactly true. And I think that this is a delightful time to see what the fuck does the internet want. What the fuck does the internet want? So I found this delightful post on DM's Academy on Reddit, and I want to read out the whole thing because I think it's awesome. So the title of it is Balance Between Consequences and Railroading. And it says, one of the things I really enjoy as a DM is the ability to bring the world to life around the players and to create an environment that they feel they affect with their presence and actions. And while this means they're rewarded with positive changes in the world around them when they succeed, examples are the town store gets new stock because the goblins ambushing the traders on the road were dealt with. That also means I feel like I have to enforce some consequences sometimes to make the world feel real. Another example is the party disregards the goblin's pot hook entirely, and before they know it, they've bought out all the goods in the town, and there's an increasingly richer goblin gang in the woods. What do you feel all is a solid balance of stuff like this to avoid the players feeling like the DM is smacking them down for not doing the quests they were supposed to do, and forcing them into an assumed mindset that they're being railroaded? Less looking for advice here, more just for other people's opinions about this style of world building and plot development. Also, the consequences don't need to be negative, obviously. I just mean that I try to create a feeling that the world goes on without them beyond their point of view. This is a prime example, in my opinion, of they're using the word railroading wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything that person says in that post is brilliant. Yeah. And I think that point at the end, I try to create a feeling that the world goes on without them beyond their point of view. I think that is something that every GM should strive to do. Yeah. I think that makes the world more interesting to play in. That's brilliant.
I agree.
User McShay Muso Giblet.
McShamus?
Giblet. Oh, McShamus, yeah. Son of Seamus. That's weird.
McShamus Giblet. Anyways, awesome post. I do think that the word railroading here is wrong, because
yes,
when you say when they're being railroaded, they wouldn't think that. And if they did, then they have a different version of what railroading is. This isn't the good sense of railroading. You give them a plot hook and they ignored it. Therefore, there are consequences to those actions. Do they think that they're bad? Who knows? That's up to opinions, right? Like you bought out the store goods and now there's a big old gang of goblins. That's awesome. That makes me feel
that's so fucking cool.
Awesome. That's great. And that should happen. And if you're building your world that way, good fucking job, because that's what should happen. Your adventurers, whatever, 4 of them, 2 of them, 10 of them, they're 10 people in a gigantic world. And if you do that, that'll make them feel like the world is so big. Like, and then it's just a simple, just the woods outside has a bigger gang. But once they put those pieces together, oh shit. Remember, guys, that was that sign that we found on the bulletin board of a gang of goblins taking over traders. We completely forgot about that, and then now look, right? That's awesome.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. I think asking for a solid balance. I don't know. I mean, I don't think there is any such thing as a solid balance, but the balance between consequences happening in the world and players feeling like they're being punished is not as fine a line as a lot of people think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think if your players start to feel like they're being punished, you'll probably know, or hopefully you'll know, and hopefully they'll tell you.
Communication is key.
Don't punish your players. Punish the characters.
That's great. That's a good way of putting it.
But I think that's how the balance, because you don't want to be punishing anyone, but you want there to be cause and effect.
Cause and effect, exactly.
And I think that the way you prevent it from feeling like punishment is allowing good things to come from player actions as well that affect the greater world.
Yeah.
I mean, in the desert campaign that I'm running right now, you guys you stopped that clock dungeon.
Yeah.
You reset the clock, which didn't stop the threat entirely, but it bought the world 1,000 years before they have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And that, even just the change of the rumbling, the earthquakes that were happening, that cascades out. That's going to have a huge effect on the world that you guys may or may not ever know or ever see. I mean, but it does. And then 1,000 years from now, it might have some negative consequences if you guys aren't still around or have not managed to leave proper information about how to reset it. But who knows? So, like, good things can happen too. And I think it's really important to allow good consequences and bad consequences in equal-ish measure, and to make sure that your negative consequences, not bad consequences, but your negative consequences aren't punishing the players for
their choices,
mistakes.
Yeah. I think that it's also a good, thought experiment, a good way of just asking yourself when you're thinking about, okay, my players did this and that, and that's not what I thought they were going to do. What are some ways that I can, how does that affect my world? Simply asked, because they didn't do this, what's going to happen now? And you can write out a paragraph of things that could happen, or you can write bullet points of what could happen, but good or bad, you can kind of choose. And the thing here as well is they might not even know about what happened. They could, if they don't ever go back into those woods, right? They might not even know about it. They bought up all the goods and didn't put together that there are no more traders coming into this place. Why? Okay, well, we bought them out. Guess we're going to go to the next town. Or one player is like, but why aren't there any traders coming here? Why aren't there any more new goods? And then from there, now they're dealing with a much stronger goblin gang, rather than if they had dealt with this earlier, that would have been a lot weaker and easier to deal with. But now it's a lot stronger, a lot harder. These are things you ask yourself, and these are the pieces of the puzzle you put together. And this is a collaborative story that you're now creating. I think this is awesome, an awesome post. And there isn't really, you can pick and choose the good and the bad, but you are creating problems, not solutions. Duh?
Yeah. Creating problems, not solutions. Let the players come up with the solutions to the problem, and then create another problem based on what their solution was.
Ding.
Whether that's they ignored it and the problem is now much worse because that was their solution, was to ignore it, or the problem is a lot easier because now they have help from the town, or now the terrain is not totally fucked. Now they can move a little faster, or whatever the new problem is. I think, create problems, not solutions. Let your players, that's how you avoid bad railroading. You create problems, not solutions.
All right, Sean, why don't you wrap us up? What did we
Yeah.
learn?
What did we learn today? Well, class, today we learned hashtag not all railroads. We determined that there are two different types of railroading, one of which needs a workshop for a new name, basically, that we should spread to the community.
Yeah.
But railroading, negative railroading, is when you ignore player choices and take away player agency by ignoring those choices. You lock them in to only one thing that they can do, because no matter what else they do, it doesn't matter. That's what happens. That's not great. That's bad railroading. But there are good ways that you can railroad, and that's by limiting player options, by creating problems, not solutions, by setting up paths that they can take that then take them down on that journey to the next set of choices, not to a destination, but to the next set of choices. We talked about the fact that for a lot of players, having too much choice is overwhelming. It's really hard to make a decision, to come up with something to do, because you as the GM are the arbiter. So you are the one who's agreed to this position, this social contract, hey, to create a series of options for them to take. So you are creating those options, and then they get to make the choices within those. Just presenting them with nothing but choice, that can be really hard. So you need to strike a balance, and that's going to lean a little more toward free choice, free form, or a little more into straight railroading or queer railroading, depending on your table. And also, side note, but there are a lot of different types of tita-upaja. So if one is too railroady, your players and you think, or one is too freeform, check out the others. There are a ton of them.
So many. There's so many.
Check out our website. We have a couple of blog posts about different games.
Yeah.
Anyway, the last couple of things that we talked about, we want to remind you that a published adventure, if you want to run them, a lot of them are really cool. A lot of them are really fun, both the officially published ones from a big company and the smaller indie ones. Go check out the smaller indie ones. Support your indie creators. But those published adventures, those published campaigns, even, it could be a 1 to 20 published campaign, but it's just an outline. It's a series of plot points that you need to hit or may want to hit in the service of telling this story that your players are going to make choices within. And you can weave in things that are not a part of the officially published stuff as your players make these choices, in order to help guide them to that next plot point in the story, to get to that next cliffhanger episode or whatever it is, that the next mid-season break. And so that's how you take a published adventure and you don't railroad, heavy quotes, your players through it. You allow them to let that adventure exist in their world, which is also your world. And then just to reiterate from our What the Fuck Does the Internet Want, which was really great, players' actions should have consequences, both negative and positive consequences. What the characters do should affect the greater world. That's what makes it interesting. That's what makes it feel immersive, is when their actions have consequences. But it's important to not punish players for their choices. You don't want to take things away from players because they've made choices. You want to create problems and let them create the solution, and let their actions then cascade. And that's how you build a really fun, really immersive world. And that's what we learned today. And then we also took a fun little ride on an Amtrak and found out just what kind of evil dick Thomas the Tank Engine can be.
Amazing.
Man, why can't we ever make nice things?
I know. Well, we made
Big Bird. Big Bird was nice.
And Skipper was also really great. You know, we've made a handful, and by a handful I mean like 3.
Yeah, probably.
And that's it for this episode of a GM's Toolbox. If you found this helpful, please leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts. This is super important, gang. This is super important. Please leave us a review wherever you get your podcast listening on. We really appreciate it. Also, check out our website at thearcanery.com, where you can pick up a free 25 NPC PDF. And if you leave us a review, you may be turned into an NPC for our future content creations. We're also on YouTube, where you can listen to us there at The Arcanery. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.
Bye.